We just get underneath this archway, and all of a sudden feel this enormous explosion. And running up the road is 2 or 3 people their clothes are just, so half their clothes have been blown off them, and there's blood and guts everywhere. We know, my friend and I know, that we need to get back in our compound.
Hello, welcome to Life Changes with Adventure Solos. In this episode, Chris and I speak to Angela. Hers is a story of resilience and adaptability. The deck of life has certainly been stacked against Angela. We speak to her about her life changes, from the traumatic experiences and near-death misses she experienced whilst being a civilian contractor in Iraq, to unexpectedly becoming a carer for her paralysed husband, who contracted a horrible illness whilst they were abroad. She's a remarkable lady who has refused to let these setbacks get in her way and has fought through it all to come out the other side and rekindle old hobbies and take up new adventures. We also talked to her about her ongoing PTSD, how this has affected her, but also how she's coped with it and not let it stop her in her tracks. Sorry, that's another in-joke, as she worked in the rail industry. I need to stop those in these introductions. Some really challenging topics on this episode, but Angela is inspiring, and her story tells us that no matter what happens in life, we can get through it.
Angela, great to have you on. We'd like to start at the beginning, if that's okay, and hear a little bit about what were you like as a child, and maybe tell us about 1 or 2 memories that you have, or positive things that you remember being like as a kid.
As a child, I was always said that I was a old head on young shoulders. I had to grow up very, very quickly. One of my favourite aunts says that her first memory of me was as a 4-year-old. She had come to visit my father. My mother wasn't very well, and her first memory of me is me rushing past her as she's talking to my father with a bucket in my hand, trudging up the stairs to go and wash my older brother's bedroom, because he used to soil himself, so I used to help clean up, and that was as a 3-year-old. And in the kitchen there was a little stool by the kettle where I could stand up on the stool and make everybody a cup of tea. So right away from being very, very young, I was the carer of the family. I was my father's little helper.
That's helped shape, I guess, the future, and that feeds into what we're going to talk about.
Yes. Yeah, it's enabled me to keep going when maybe some other people would just fold. And to be honest with you, it's a strange thing, but cycling does that for you as well. You know, you go out on a club run and you're not quite as fast and not quite as fit as some of the other people on the club run. And it's an effort to get home, an effort just to keep those cogs turning, because you know nobody's going to get you home. It's got to be you that gets you home. You know, you can be cold, tired, hungry, but you know it's you that's got to get you home. And that mental strength just carries you through into work life and into adult life, I think. And also that with the things that went on in my childhood has given me resilience to pick myself up several times when I've really fallen over.
Yeah, good. Well, I'm glad there's a silver lining to it. Yeah, as you say, a resilience and determination. Do we say stubbornness?
Yes, yeah,
Definitely.
definitely,
Good.
absolutely.
Awesome. Well, yeah, sorry to hear things were tough, but it does help set the scene a bit. So, yeah, I guess we're on to you growing up, maybe moving away from home. And at some point, you met someone and got married. So, go on, talk us through that journey a little bit.
I met my husband through work. He was a railway signaller as they call it now. And we dated for many years. I also worked on the railway. I worked my way up from one of the lower clerical jobs into the operations part of the railway, which was back in my day was quite unusual for a woman to be frontline operations. So I was actually working in the railway yards, and very male orientated environment. I was one of the youngest depot managers. I had drivers and signalmen reporting to me. And also in the freight sector was more male dominated than the passenger sector. I worked my way up the ladder to various management jobs. And then I left the actual frontline railway job to go into consultancy. And I worked for one of the big players in the consultancy world. At first I specialised in rail because, that's where I'd come from. But they were looking for volunteers to go and support a multinational program in Iraq. And this was, so this is now 2003. The war, the war in Iraq had been deemed to be over, but as we all know, it still kind of petered on for a number of years after that. So I got chosen to go with a multinational team with the US Corps of Engineers, some blue chip US companies, and UK companies. And we worked in a program office in Baghdad. We had over 1,000 projects that we were working on, trying to rebuild the country after the war. We still constantly had to run to the bomb shelters, and I would say I was there for 2 years. I would say I had 4 quite close calls while I was there, and one extremely close call.
Angela, a bit more about your relationship with your husband and how that developed and what it was like having that relationship at the base like that.
He didn't come out with me to Iraq, so he was still working in the UK. But while I was out in Iraq, we both decided that it was about time we got married. So my new colleagues out in Iraq helped me put together my wedding, totally online. I used to get leave every 3 months for 3 weeks every 3 months. So one of my 3-week leaves, I both myself and my husband flew out to Las Vegas, and we got married in the Venetian Hotel in Las Vegas. And we were met at the airport by one of my new colleagues' niece, who made sure that we got to the courthouse to get our licenses and all that sort of stuff. She also took me to the dress shop where my dress was delivered to get it altered. I'd never seen it. I'd seen pictures of it online. But needless to say, everything went absolutely swimmingly. We had an absolutely tremendous time, and we got married.
Did you stay there for the honeymoon?
No, we actually flew from Las Vegas after a couple of days to New Orleans, and we spent a week in New Orleans because we wanted to. My husband wanted to do airboat rides and stuff like that.
What, an airboat ride? Is that? I'm thinking Florida, where they have those hovercraft things on the.
No, well, they also have quite an extensive Everglades type swamps and things in New Orleans as well. So just outside New Orleans. Yeah.
What year did you get married? And because that sounds like you were using the internet before it was fashionable to do so for that kind of thing.
We got married in 2004, September 2004. So then I spent about another year in Iraq, and came home for 2 or 3 months, and then I got posted back out to Abu Dhabi to work on a master plan project for the new port in Abu Dhabi. And this time my husband came with me. And then unfortunately, in 2007, in June 2007, I got up one morning and my husband said, "Oh, I don't feel very well. My neck is really stiff and I've got a bit of a temperature." So unfortunately, I didn't think anything of it. I just threw a packet of paracetamol at my husband and says, "I will see you at lunchtime." Yeah. I'll be back to check on you at lunchtime. But unfortunately,
man flu. That's
what was going through my head. You see, but unfortunately, he didn't get any better. And we left it for a couple of days. We had a GP locally. We talked to the doctor, and he said, "Oh, that doesn't sound very good." So we walked to the local hospital, and then within 3 days, my husband was paralyzed from the neck downwards.
Wow. And did you know what was causing it then at this point?
Right. So what they told us was that it was a Staphylococcus aureus infection in his neck. It's a bacterial infection, apparently, and somehow it had got into his neck and it had eaten away at his upper vertebrae and crushed his spinal cord.
Okay.
And how long would that have been going on for, do you think?
Well, they say it probably would have been coming on for about a week before he would have seen symptoms.
Wow, but very quickly.
Yeah.
It wasn't like months and years.
No. 1,000,000,000 to 1 chance of catching anything like that, and nearly as high odds of actually surviving it. But he did.
Was he stubborn as same trait as you then, is it?
I think so. So we spent a month in the hospital at Abu Dhabi. Then we got airlifted back to the UK via Dubai. Then he spent the rest of the year in hospitals in Sheffield to start off with, and then the Wellington Rehab Centre in London.
Again, it shows your resilience. Like, you just wanted, that was your plan. Things hadn't worked out, but you weren't going to let that stop you.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously everybody thought we were totally lost the plot, but like you said, we got nowhere to live in the UK, and all of our stuff was over there. So we went out there and got out there, and the company that I was supposed to be working for decided that they couldn't take on the liability of me having a husband that was paralyzed. Yeah. So I started up my own company.
Good for you. In the same industry as this, or something completely different?
Yes. No, this was, I became a rail consultant, freelance rail consultant.
So just to check at this stage then, your husband, you said, I think, is paralyzed from the neck down, which must have been difficult and a shock for both of you. You're learning all about that and what comes with that. You're his carer. You're moving across the world, and the job's not worked out, so you're starting your own business. Okay.
Yes. So we had we had a carer in just to help care for him. Now, with the type of work that I was doing, I was able a lot of the time to actually work from home. And then if I did have to go out to external meetings, I could get a private carer for him to look after him for a few hours.
When you say caring, Angela, I really don't know much about what that would look like. So could you explain a bit more about that?
When you've got a spinal cord injury, it doesn't just mean that you're not able to move your limbs, okay? It affects a lot of other things. For instance, he wasn't able to feel hot or cold below his waist. He wasn't able to move his legs at all. He did actually get back some movement in his arms, so he could lift his arms to shoulder height, but that was it. He'd got these digits on his hands that would work, but these two wouldn't. So he was able to move about in an electric wheelchair just. To eat his food, you had to cut his food up, and he could eat it with a strap. There was a special strap that used to go around his hand that used to put the fork in, so he would be able to eat his own food. I mean, how much detail do you want me to go into? Because it's pretty horrific what we used to have to do. He could not go to the toilet on his own at all. So he used to have to be catheterized every 6 hours to empty his bladder.
Right.
He could not go to do a number 2 at all on his own. So he used to have to get help to do that as well. He used to sometimes stop breathing during the night.
Wow.
So you learn to listen while you're sleeping.
But how many people in the UK are there with this no specific need?
There isn't many that have got that great a need that are still well enough to live in the community, who want to still have a relationship with their spouses or their family. Because everybody was saying put him in a home. Well, excuse me, we're married. Why should I put him in a home? We're married.
So that's what some people do, or that's the alternative. You put them in a special
And that's the
home.
problem. There isn't any specialist homes for people with spinal cord injury. He would have ended up in the local care home.
Old people's home, basically.
Yes.
Is that right?
And how is this starting to take its toll on you?
So over the years, I became very isolated, got no friends. There was a few friends that I kept in touch with on the internet, and that was about it. I had no visitors, no friends, very, very isolating. You can't really go out because it's just so difficult, because everything, if you did go out, you have to plan it to the nth degree to make sure that where you're going to is accessible, safe, etc. So that's how it affects you. And towards the end, I went through the menopause, which was horrendous. So I got that to deal with as well, and I put on a lot of weight. My health was deteriorating, and then of course we had COVID. I spent 5 months and didn't see a soul because we were isolating, obviously.
It must have taken. I was going to say it must have taken quite a big financial toll. This, it's not just a mental.
We used all our savings basically on special equipment and all sorts of stuff. Yeah.
And Angela, I wonder if Chris, correct me if I'm wrong here, it might just be worth jumping back a bit about the situation with the NHS, if you're happy to talk about that, in terms of because you were in the press for going on a hunger strike to try and presumably get better care. Would you mind telling us about that?
Finding carers that were suitable for somebody with that level of a spinal cord injury was next to impossible. We had carers trying to look after him that didn't have stable diabetes, so they were liable to fall into a coma at any minute. We had people that were trying to do 2 jobs and then come and do our job. We had people that were told, just go and sit with a book all night.
Right. Oh, like no specialist knowledge, just go and read a book.
Yeah. And I just got desperate. I just got really, really desperate doing one part of looking after him. So, how can I do this all on my own? This is ridiculous. He's entitled to fully funded care. Where is it? They were never able to provide suitable care for him. So I must admit, the last 3-4 years that he was alive, I just gave up. I didn't even bother asking anymore. I didn't even manage to get to my dad's funeral because they couldn't even provide a carer to cover me for while I could go to my dad's funeral. That's where that came from. I just got so desperate that I just thought, well, I've got to do something. I can't do this.
And so what did you do? Tell us about that.
I got in touch with media outlets and just said, right, I'm going on hunger strike until they sort this out. But to be honest with you, I went on hunger strike for about 2 weeks. I did drink stuff still, but just didn't eat anything. They did improve the situation a little bit, and they did listen a little bit, but to be honest, it didn't really help.
I guess it's difficult, isn't it? Because there's a system there where the individuals maybe within it want to help, but there's just underfunded and it's creaking at the edges. And if you say your circumstances are a bit unique, it's just trying to, I'm sure the will was there from people, but if at the end of the day it doesn't help you if the support isn't there. So what were you feeling during you're going through this hunger strike? Like, did you feel empowered for it? Did you feel you were taking a stand for people, in your circumstance as well? And what was it like?
Yeah, a bit of all that, to be honest. I just, it was the only thing I could think of to do, to be honest. I'd already written letters. I'd phoned everybody. I'd written to MPs. I'd done all that beforehand. This was just, right, I'm going to do something stupid. I just had to do something dramatic just to get people's attention.
I guess it was you taking a stand, though, when you were making a conscious choice. Like you say, you just got to your end of the tether. You were desperate for help, and you were just taking a stand and trying to make a point. I guess, it was a cry for help, I guess, and just showed where you're at. I guess it taken its toll, obviously, on your husband, but on you as well as his wife and carer. And I'm sure there's a lot of people, and what's shocking is, like, you would have been relatively young at this point, but you see in elderly people, like even my granddad, this is going back 10 years, but his wife became unwell, and he's a 90-year-old bloke at this point trying to look after his wife, and then he starts having his own physical and maybe even mental, it must have been, he wasn't in mental crisis or anything, but that must be depressing for him because he's in a similar situation to you. And so it's terrible and shocking that you went through that, but you just think it must happen to people like a generation older than you, like, all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah. It does. I see it all around. So as I say, the last few years I've been trying to rebuild my life, but I suddenly became aware that I'd got PTSD. Yeah. It hadn't really affected me much up until that point. Even when I came back from Iraq, I'd got it a bit because I was in a hotel in Dubai on the way back of my last trip, and there was some fireworks going on across the river, and I dived to the bed, under the bed, because it just totally shocked me and just threw me back, and I felt really, really sick, physically sick. And I thought, oh, that's a bit of a new sensation, but I just sort of kind of live with it. A lot of us that came back from Iraq, if a car backfired, it would really make us jump. Loud, sudden noises would make us jump, but nothing that none of us could just say, oh, well, that's a bit silly, but you know what I mean? But so I'd kind of had mild symptoms throughout the years and just sort of brushed it off. But the way my husband died was horrific. He was fighting for every breath in the last 5 days of his life, and then I was in the room when he had his heart attack and he died. So it was absolutely horrific. I found in the months after he had died, obviously I'm grieving, but I couldn't sleep. I started reliving some of the more serious events that I'd had in Iraq. The near misses that I'd had, and some of the horrible things that I saw out there. I started having nightmares about them.
So you said you had, and when you were in Iraq, you had, did you say 3 or 4 near misses and one particularly close call?
In the green zone, as we called it, or the international zone, it's quite a large area in Baghdad, and inside there you'd got Saddam Hussein's old palace, there's his son's old palace, there's quite a lot of other buildings. There's the Al Rashid Hotel, there's the American embassy that they were building, the old post office. It's a very, very big area with lots of houses in it. And we used to have a designated dining area that we used to go to, but we were allowed to go to 2 or 3 other different areas for a change. And we had some cars to get around, some armoured cars to get around in the green zone. So my friend and I took one of the armoured cars to the Al Rashid Hotel just to get a change of scenery and get somewhere else for lunch. And we're coming back after lunch, and we're coming up to the road to get back to our compound, and we just get underneath this archway, and all of a sudden, I'm just trying to think which we hear, well, we feel, let alone hear, we feel this enormous explosion. And running up the road is 2 or 3 people in, well, their clothes are just, so half their clothes have been blown off them, and there's blood and guts everywhere. We know, my friend and I know that we need to get back in our compound because everybody's going to be really worried about us rather than just staying there. So we put our foot down, go across this junction, and on our right hand side on the corner as we're going across this junction is the Green Zone Cafe that's just been blown up. And we've literally missed being in the direct debris field by 3 seconds, I would say.
Yeah.
And well, there was just unspeakable stuff on the road when we went across this junction. It's just it was horrific. So we managed to get back in the compound, so we were okay, but it was an extremely close call. And in fact, they did actually find some damage on the car, so we must have been that close.
And had the cafe been full of people?
So the cafe had at least 35 people in it. So we got back in, and I was so shook up I couldn't speak. Basically, I was just I couldn't even explain to them, because our security guy took me away in a room and said, "Look, talk to me. Well, what's just happened to you? Talk me through what's just." I couldn't speak. I was just totally. I just couldn't believe what had just happened to me. And I must admit, that night I got very drunk.
Yeah. You would, wouldn't you?
I got very, very drunk. But the guy,
self-medicating.
Yeah, the guys were lovely. They made sure I got home that night. But I must admit, I got very, very drunk, and I don't normally drink that much. So. But I know a lot of us said that when we went on leave because we used to work 3 months and go on leave for 3 weeks, there'll be slight signs of it in the 3 weeks when you go home. Like, if somebody makes a sudden loud sound, you'd hit the pavement. there was funny things like we weren't able to put our toilet paper down the toilet in Iraq. You had to put it in a little bucket, and you'd forget when you got home.
You'd be looking for the bucket, or you'd go into the bin. So, and then, sorry, did this actually happen to you? I mean, did you end up hitting the deck when you heard a backfiring car and stuff like that?
Yeah, a couple of times when I was at home. Yeah.
And what did you think when that happened? Like, were you sort of very consciously aware of it?
Embarrassed that I'd done it, because you just...
You're like, what am I doing?
Yeah. And the other thing is you go to look underneath your car, because before we used to take any of the cars out, we used to have to check the cars for them not looking right.
It sounded like this guy from your security detail really tried to do the right thing in terms of getting you to talk about it.
And he did manage to get to me to talk about it the day after, but I had to go home. I had to go back to my bunk that afternoon because I just couldn't. Yeah. But it was good that I was with somebody, because I was able to. My friend and I were able to talk to each other about it for some reason. Yeah. So yeah.
But it's encouraging to hear the counselling helped you so much.
And at the time you think, oh, why am I doing this? I'm just talking about what's gone on and everything. But it's the way that the counsellor comes back and challenges the way that you think about stuff that helps. And they also give you some coping mechanisms. And that will be different for different people, what works for them. I mean, for me, because I've only got a mild case of it, a lot of times she's just said, look, you're doing the right thing. You just need to remove yourself from the immediate trigger. Go and take some deep breaths and just get back in the moment. So the mindfulness that everybody's always on about is very important. A lot of people find taking up meditation and stuff like that helps. Being able to get back into a zone where you're just thinking about breathing in, breathing out, and just being where you are right now, being present.
Presumably, it's also like I think people often miss this about meditation. It's about understanding the difference between you, your conscious mind, subconscious mind, or however you want to say it. That's actually what mindfulness means. People think it's sitting in a room and just being there. For me, it's not. It's taking that time to understand. My brain is now thinking about the shopping. It's now thinking about Iraq. It's now thinking about whatever. And actually, okay, I've noticed that, and I can do something about it.
Yes, I would agree with you, Nat. Definitely, yes, yeah. So things are pretty good at the minute. I'm busy at work,
and that's the therapy stuff. Did you? I guess when we've been chatting, we've sort of at the very beginning we touched on how you had a difficult childhood, if you will, and had to be independent very early on. Then we've touched on some Iraq stuff, and then obviously the caregiving side. I guess were these all sort of three topics that you were discussing during that therapy sessions, and did you almost resolve some of that stuff, or is it just a different way of thinking? Is that not quite how it works?
There's a bit of both, to be honest, Chris. You go through and my therapist challenged some of the way that I thought about some things. Challenged the way that I sometimes put myself down, stuff like that. Just try to raise my self-esteem up a bit, because for some reason that had got quite low. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that we discussed that. There was other stuff.
He's only asking because he's not done it, and every person we have on, we try and persuade Chris to do some therapy. But I'm hoping by episode 250 we'll have persuaded him that it might be a good thing for him to do.
The counsellor that I had, Chris, was very non-threatening, okay? And it was just like having a conversation, right? But because of their training, they're able to ask you the right questions to get you thinking slightly differently to where you think. So I would say something and she'd say, well, yeah, that's the way that you perceive it, but can I tell you the way that I perceive it? And then you realize that your way of thinking is not the only way of thinking about that situation. So the counsellor to me was challenging me and the way that I thought about things. And that's what I needed. But everybody needs something a bit different, you know. It's
good.
Yeah. It just hopes to widen up your horizons a bit.
I mean, what you described there is actually kind of probably useful for almost everyone, I'd say, and challenging perspectives. But what the PTSD kind of therapy is more about, my understanding is more about kind of regressive and desensitizing you to something that's happened previously, right?
So that was, and again, you've got to bear in mind that I haven't got the severe type, so I don't need the severe. Yeah. So for me, she got me talking about what happened. Okay.
Yeah.
So that it wasn't something that I was just keeping to myself. It became more of a story I could tell and tell comfortably. So you get comfortable.
And you're not having those like emotions attached to
the
story,
exactly. Right? Yeah. So that's what I needed, but other people might need more aggressive type of treatment.
Yeah, people can use that like and as you said, it's layered, right? So it was about Iraq, but also about your husband.
Yeah.
But for other people, it might just be something that happened in their childhood. They could have got bullied and beaten up at school, and it might be, you know, you need that kind of therapy to help deal with that type of thing, I think.
So it sounds like you're still on a journey then. Obviously, you know, you recognized that you had PTSD and maybe that even took a while, and then you've taken action and you got this intensive therapy. I guess it's still a journey that you're learning to navigate. And do you see yourself still being on this sort of path towards healing?
Yes, yeah. And some good news for you. I started dating again in January.
Although if you've been on the internet dating, then that's not necessarily good news, but proud of you. And you've mentioned a few things actually, but you kind of said, you know, in October, if you will, you more consciously maybe took steps to, for want of a better description, reintegrate yourself with society, having maybe been isolated as a caregiver. I guess, well, go on. I mean, that's probably how our paths crossed for starters. So go on, tell us a little bit about that. What made you?
I'd already started doing quite a bit of walking by myself to try and get my weight down and try and get my health back, because my health at the end of caring for my husband was really, really bad. I was in a state, basically. I was 3 stone overweight.
I guess you'd been number 2 though, hadn't you? Like number 1 was having to look after him, and your needs had to come second.
So I spent sort of like the first 2 years trying to get my life straight, trying to get me straight physically, and then of course this last year it's been the mental thing as well. So yeah, and I saw your advert on, I think it was on Facebook. I probably saw it. I thought, oh, that might be fun. Let me go and meet other people that are on their own in a non-threatening environment. Yeah, so that's how I picked that walk to go on, which I'm glad I did, because it was a lot of
so
fun.
You joined us for the Borwick Hall weekend, and we did a walk, a bit of canoeing, some archery, and then a bit of bouldering on that one. So was there something in particular? I guess you mentioned as well that you do kind of some cycling. Has that always been something you've been keen on from as a kid? So just maybe.
Yes, yeah. I used to race cycle from the ages of 13 up until I was about 21. Oh no, later than that, maybe up until I was about 26. But work gets in the way for doing stuff like that. But then I used to do long distance endurance stuff. So I've ridden Land's End to John O'Groats, Boston, Montreal, Boston, just a few of the rides that I've done. And I'm looking to get back into that again. I've just bought myself a new gravel bike.
You said you were gonna.
So I'm looking forward when the weather gets better, getting out on that. So,
yeah.
And was it quite a big step then to go back into the world and book the event that you went on?
Not particularly. I mean, I'm a fairly confident person amongst strangers because I have to be for my work. Sure. I project manage diverse multinational teams, so it's.
But what was it like? I'm interested in like that when you turned up for the event. I mean, you sounds like you're confident, you're happy, kind of like to turn up and meet a bunch of new people. You do that for your job, and you just looking forward to the events or something, I guess.
The thing that I was a bit nervous about was. Am I going to struggle? Am I going to struggle keeping up with everybody else? Are they going to be a lot younger than me? And am I going to struggle? That was the things that I was, because I know my fitness levels have kind of nosedived over the last few years, but I think I did all right, didn't I, Chris?
Yeah, it's not a test, it's not a challenge, but yeah. I think it's funny, isn't it? Because I think a lot of the time people are nervous about coming along, and it's great that you weren't, but then people do have different fears, and one of the ones I do get quite often is people worry that they're too old, and it's like someone will be 50 and be like, am I too old? It's like, no, the average age is probably like 49, 50. It's like, it's designed for 30s, 40s, 50s, so yeah, spot on. And it's all beginner-friendly stuff, so you can do different stuff, but it's not hardcore. Sure, you did more hardcore stuff when you're off on your travels or abroad or all this stuff. So very good. And so it seems like there's a bit of a theme though. Like you get out on your cycling. You said you started with some walking. You came along to that event. You've been and bought your gravel bike. So yeah, I guess maybe it's almost two birds with one stone, because it's great to be out and if you're cycling the physical side, but just being outside and the sunlight and nature, it just helps, doesn't it? I guess it's nature's healing.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So I think that's me, I think. Yeah.
Well, it's been, I think, what would I say? You've had a tough paper round, I think people would say, wouldn't they? Like in terms of you've not been dealt the best cards is maybe a better way of putting it. And I think it's very inspiring to hear your story and hear how resilient you've been and come out the other side and then go back out into the world and I guess wishing you all the best for that. And it sounds like it's kind of, it's been difficult, but I don't know if onwards and upwards that's quite a British way of putting things, isn't it? But it's like
that's the way I deal with things. Yeah, it definitely onwards and upwards.
Brilliant. Hey, it's Chris here from Adventure Solos, where we help people in their 30s, 40s and 50s to rediscover themselves and meet new people. If you'd like to find out more about Adventure Solos events, visit adventuresolos.com. That's adventuresolos.com, where you're very welcome to stay in touch by joining the mailing list. So adventuresolos.com and enter your details to sign up to the mailing list.